Partnerships and relationships.
You can see that line. So where do we come from? I've shown this slide before, which is a shot of Centennial Park, and in fact it alludes to the Indigenous history of occupation of this particular site. It's known that Aboriginal communities in the Lachlan Ponds, previously in the freshwater ponds of Centennial Park, would camp here en route down to, English term, Rushcutters Bay to do some fishing. However, in fact it wasn't quite as luxurious as that in terms of this site. In the past, this is the Sandhill. You can see exactly where we are. There's the sandstone wall of Victoria Barracks. That's Oxford Street going up to the Town Hall and the library. So this is kind of pretty barren Kofa at a particular point in time. Now you'd also know though that it was previously the Albion Street Primary School, which is the major building up on the top of the block. I'm giving you a bit of a physical background obviously to start this presentation so you know the nature of the site. So 1895, Albion Street Primary School. By 1920, Sydney Tech High, quite a famous technical high school, had a lot of prestigious graduates that have gone on to be great politicians and great aviators and a whole bunch of fabulous careers through to 1958. Then of course there was a string of different names, and the institution went from Alexander Mackie Teachers College to Alexander Mackie CAE to the City Art Institute under various and different forms. And there's just some shots there. And I saw this image up here of the student with the earphones on. I thought, there, new media art. It was always in the corridors of this particular site in terms of what must have been a science lab, I guess, in about the 1950s. Okay, so it's not uninteresting to realise that we're in the middle of a very major construction period. And if you go back and think, when was the site first built upon? 1895. When was Sydney Tech High? 1920. Where was there a major refurbishment to expand? 1940. When did the Pebble Creek buildings emerge? This is a Pebble Creek 1960s building. When did we build F Block? 1989. When did we really start, in a sense, in proper the current refurbishment? 2009. So every 20 or 25 years on the site, it's come around as a cycle in terms of refurbishment and change. Let me go back to the second question, what are we? Well then, I guess, felt that I should go back to the originals, the Kofa alumni. There's actually 10,000 alumni, so if we go back to what are we, we're obviously built upon the great record of our alumni. There's 10,000 and we're actually in contact with about 6,000. So that's the kind of heritage, I guess, of Kofa. And if I go back and think, well, what's the nature of the work that we're currently doing? It can be characterised by a number of descriptions. One of them, of course, is the cross-disciplinary nature of our work. We've got a school of art, we've got a school of design, a school of media arts, a big school of art education and art history. 2 panoramic shots of the Kofa annual last year, albeit kind of jammed into the roundhouse, was again an illustration, a demonstration of that cross-disciplinarity which has been part and parcel of the way we work. I guess the second major feature was the integration of advanced technologies and their applications to art, design and media. So that idea of bringing new technologies and pushing and pulling it and seeing how it might apply to art, design and media has been a consistent one. And of course our major achievement in this area is successful gaining of probably $20 million now in terms of the iCinema interactive immersive cinema enterprise, and then in turn we probably would have sold about $7 million worth of the AVIs, the advanced visualisation environments, to the Australian mining industry, and just at the end of last year we've sold one of these AVIs to the Chinese mining industry. Virtual reality experiences which are so convincing, they've become fabulous training vehicles. The next area which has emerged is the environmental and sustainability area. The third area that I've seen grow and develop, and in a sense we've collectively been supportive of, is this idea of development, using art and design and media in a developmental way. And then I think it's the fourth area I'm up to, is of course the social and political engagement arena. For many, many years, people like Phil George, with this project on the Cronulla beach riots of 2005, pretty scandalous era in Australian history, did this fabulous work on Islamic patterns on that most Aussie of symbols. In terms of the teaching area, though, over that same period, we've been really interested in innovation in teaching. A couple of things: leading application of informal education, and surprise, surprise, for an art school, job-ready graduates. That's unheard of. How can you get a job after coming to an art school? Now, of course, you know we can, but we've had had quite an emphasis on that, and through comprehensive industry links. Now, in terms of innovation in teaching and learning, a whole lot of problem-solving, project-based learning, as you would expect, taking them out to Fowler's Gap, where we've got a research station, an arid research zone with Idris Murphy, one of our painters, but indeed making studios out there and giving access to international artists through Res Arts, Residential Art Studio, international students, COFA folk. And of course, we've also done a lot of innovation, and this is kind of ever evolving in terms of methods of delivery, and the Omnium, the COFA Online folk, have got a enviable record internationally in relation to the number of courses that they deliver. And that point that I think was on that first slide about the industry integration and the job-ready graduates can be well illustrated by our education people here, who of course are working in schools, but they're also working with exhibitions and biennales as guides, as this particular slide indicates. And this is certainly by no means last and least. We do have a very, very strong conventional, I would call it conventional, art history department with published books by Faye Brower there on the left, and Sue Best working with artists, contemporary artists in South America. So that's the breadth of kind of teaching, and I wouldn't want to give us a survey of what's currently happening without identifying just a couple of aspects of our Indigenous work, and this is really very, very exciting because it's blossoming in all sorts of areas, from the deep research end through to teaching up in Papunya. Now, I'm talking about here at COFA and up there at Papunya, but COFA, in fact, here and now is on Oxford Street in a big way in Sydney, but we've always operated nationally and internationally. Now, just to say where are we and how does this kind of happen, not surprisingly we think about this quite deeply in terms of the leadership team at COFA, and this is a little graph which I sometimes refer to about saying, well, here we are in the middle with art, design and media. We've got an institutional context being within a university, we've got a whole range of assets there, but we also want to work and necessarily work within a global context. So these kind of feed into one, not surprisingly, and in a university context even, you've got other faculties and other experiences and expertise, of course, spread across there horizontally. This is now to the future. Where are we going? And what I'm posing here is more questions, but let me just go back a little way. By going back a little way, I have to explain that we got the $48 million because we did a pitch to the federal government which said, we're this good art institution, we may be even a great art institution. It was on the premise of that we would be a gateway. It was a gateway at COFA. And the gateway, of course, was on Oxford Street, to the Oxford Street Cultural Quarter, which is OXCQ, that's and the local public here. It was also, of course, the gateway out to the art and design and media educators and professionals, locally, nationally and internationally, because there was a sense that we did have that reach. We were teaching art teachers who'd go out to the schools all over the country and they'd teach their students. There was that great reach. We would go out locally, nationally and what have you, in terms of our leadership, in terms of the way we were teaching art, and certainly in terms of the great experience we had in terms of research, the excellence in research and the networks that we were setting up. So that was the pitch, and in a sense it won the bid. And let me just very quickly go through, I'm not going to talk about this in detail because we don't have the time, but there will be this range of galleries, Oxford Street's down here and what have you. A fabulous outcome in terms of exhibiting professionally, exhibiting our own work, our doctoral students, our younger students in this range of galleries. There'll be a screen culture, which of course is increasingly important to all of our work, and we'll have a couple of very big screens and a smart, it's in fact an augmented reality space down the front as well, but two larger screens. You'll come up into a courtyard looking towards Oxford Street and there'll be a big COFA wall which will be another screen. Down on Oxford Street there'll be this screen wrapping around the cafe cafeteria, and of a night that or during the day, that augmented reality will click in if you've got the app and you've got your smartphone or your iPad or whatever, and you can see that by day or that by night. So this is a kind of destination to come to, and we would want everyone to participate. Okay, now, getting to in a sense, the challenging parts. Now, not surprisingly, we participate in a whole bunch of leadership forums in art and design schools around the world. We need to see COFA as an institution, but also it's an institution, and what that means, but for individuals. And that's got to interface ultimately with government. And government's an institution as well, but government's got to respond to deep values of individuals. And the final point is that, but who in fact owns knowledge? Who grows knowledge? Because this is all rapidly changing with open source software and free software and people interacting beyond the institution. Even our own university magazine is saying, be careful or the students will leave you behind. But what we are saying is there'll still be formal education. There'll be increasingly more informal education because of the web, gives you access to wireless, and you'll group together and you'll ignore what your lecturer is saying and do what you want. You'll bring a particular piece in. So there'll be much more open experience, open education in terms of the institution. So if you go back and remind yourself about these four concepts in terms of COFA in the future, not surprisingly, we've got to do all of them. We've got to add all of them together. They're not necessarily easily complementary, they're not mutually exclusive certainly, but we've got to manage all of them to have COFA Art, Design and Media for 2012. And a final quote from Buckminster Fuller, and thank you very much.